Please comment where you are watching in the world. Something like 5 years ago, I was talking with a woman on OkCupid. In text, email, and on the phone, she sounded sharp, huge for me, funny and energetic. We set up a coffee date, and I pick a place in her neck of the woods as I had a nearby errand to run anyway. Show up to the date, and she tells me she doesn't really care for coffee. Operating under the assumption that I must have missed that cue during our conversations, I ask if there was anything nearby that she preferred, it being her region of town anyway. She said yes, that one of her favorite spots was just a 5-minute walk away. We walk over, making pretty great conversation. Turns out we have a lot in common, including an interest in theater, comedy, similar references/influences, and even a bit of flirting, a playful arm punch from her. We get to the destination, and it is a pet store. I love pets, so I figure this could be like some sort of window shopping date, full of good conversation and getting to know her. We walk in, and breaks off almost immediately, pulls out a list from her purse, and comes back with a cart of pet goods in a few minutes. I'm pretty clueless, and try to ask if she wanted to look around or something before checking out. She says that no, she got what she needed. She pays, and I help her carry the 50 pound of dog food back to her car. We get back to her car, put the stuff away, and as I close the trunk, I see that she's inside and has started the car. I walk over to her side of the car, and she says that she really has to go. I back up so she can pull out, and she drives off. With a little feeble wave, I am confused and go back to run my errands. First, however, I am going to get that coffee. Walk back to the coffee place, and while waiting for my drink, I look at the art on the walls and realize that at least 5 of the 10 or so pieces of art on the wall have her name on them. Turns out, she's really good. No clue what happened on the date, but oh well. Back to errands. Fast forward a couple of hours, and I get a text from her saying that we should meet up later that day. I reply that I am still in the area and was going to get something to eat. She's welcome to join me. She said yes, and we made another date. Show up at the restaurant, and again we hit it off. Turns out she paints, is a great photographer, and she's taking sculpting classes while she has her day job as a commercial photographer. She's really interested in my work, scientist/engineer, and the meal just rushes right by. After an hour or so, she sees some of her friends walking across the street and says that she'll be right back. She runs out of the restaurant. Her friends are all super excited to see her, and they just immediately start talking excitedly and walk off. I wait 10 minutes, but nothing. Send a text, nothing. Even more confused, I pay the bill and walk back to my car. That was enough for me, and I was going home. Driving home, and getting my stuff ready for work the next day, when I get another text. She wants to know if I'm free to join her and her friends for a comedy show. She says one of her friends can get us in for free, and that Nick Swardson was the headliner. I was super pumped as I love Swardson more than I was weirded out by our 2 dates. So I show up and meet her and her friends. I hit it off again with the girl. Turns out we know some common people, but all her friends are giving me the "did you just fart" look the entire night. So, I make an effort to try to get to know them more, but they aren't enthralled by my presence. I chalk it up to the fact that the girl really is like 9.5/10, and on my best days, I'm a lucky 7. The show is starting, so we're getting seated, and they put us in the front row table. I start to panic a bit, as I do not like being the guy comedians interact with. However, my panic turns to sudden crotch sweating as I see that there are 5 cameras in the room. It turns out that this show is being recorded. Even better, it turns out that Swardson was never on the bill, and it is a bunch of comedians I have never heard of. I'm ready to roll with it, as this girl is fun to talk to. Then her friend, the one who works at the club, comes up to us and tells us that we need to be sure to laugh a lot as our table will be visible by the cameras. The lights dim, the show starts, and the comedy doesn't. There were people talking, and the audience was there, but it was just failed joke after failed joke. I'll remember this till the day I die. At one point, one of the comedians states that everyone has a Jewish aunt. That's the joke. You know what I'm saying? No, I don't, but because of the cameras, I sure have to act like I do. Line after line, comedian after comedian, 3 hours later, my face is just aching from fake smiles. My hands are raw from fake clapping. My mood is in the floor as I realize that my date is living this. My exhaustion suddenly turns to excitement when the show closes, but then slowly turns to panic as she leans in and asks if I liked the show. I said that some of the comedians had a few good jokes, trying to be positive. She punched me in the arm again, and told me that I was dead wrong. Dead wrong. That show was hilarious. Seeing her laugh at so many terrible jokes just ruined any attraction I had for her. I say that it is getting late, and I have work tomorrow, so I need to go. She asks if I'll walk her to her car since she parked away from her friends. I say yes, and we walk towards the exit. I walk her to her car, she hugs me, then gives me a slow, deep kiss, and says that she really wishes I understood her better. I was tired. I was exhausted. I wanted to know what the hell was going on. Out of all the thoughts running through my head at that moment, I don't think I said anything except, "Hey, how'd the dog food get from the trunk to the rear seat?" She said, and I'll never forget this, "It just does." And she drove off. So, it just does. And it just did. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from her saying that she saw my profile on OkCupid and thought we should go get some coffee sometime. My friends thought I and this lady would be a great match. This happened. It was about 2009 or so. They showed her a picture of me and showed me a picture of her. She was quite attractive with big boobs and birthing hips, which is my fetish, so I was in. I am very tall, muscular, good job, etc., so she was excited. We started talking on the phone, several times, and texting. We agreed to meet for date. She's telling me the whole time how successful and rich she is. She is an executive for a local telecom/internet company. Just got done throwing a big party for 500 people in her backyard, etc. She was very charming, sweet, and nice on the phone. I agreed to meet her during the week after work. I live 90 minutes from her home, so I have conditions. I will need to come to your house, shower, dress, and maybe do laundry because I have to work the next day. She agrees and everything is awesome. We agree to have a barbecue at-home date, where I barbecue steaks and shit, then drink wine, and have a wonderful time together. She thinks me grilling steaks and wine drinking is perfect, and is very excited. My only request is that we don't meet any family members of hers. I get off work and drive to her house, which she just had a party for 500 people. It's in a shitty part of town, and it's a duplex with a small backyard that would not accommodate 500, not even close. I give a deep sigh and step out of my truck. She comes outside with her big boobs and short shorts, waving, so I was thinking this could end well. She has 3 massive pit bulls and a border collie, which want to greet me as well because they are at the gate barking and snarling at me. I don't skip a beat. I open the gate and the dogs are on me like puppies. I love dogs and these dogs love me back, no problem at this point. We greet each other with hugs and she decides to show me how she plays with her dogs. She throws a tennis ball across her muddy backyard and these K9s go rushing for it. The biggest pit bull gets the ball, returns it, and punches me right in balls hard. I'm down. After I recover, I request to take a shower, get cleaned up and change clothes. No problem here. Bathroom was clean. I was quick. Upon entering her mansion, I was floored by the unclean smell of neglected litter boxes. After the shower, I request a beer. She says she's out. I suggest we go to the grocery store and liquor/beer/wine store to prepare for dinner. We travel to get steaks, salad, beer, etc. I buy some nice ribeye steaks, wine, beer. We get home and I start the fire for grilling. The dogs know what up and then we can't get rid of them. She starts throwing the tennis ball and the digs return, covering me with mud. While we are waiting for the fire to heat up, she wants to give me a tour of the house. She takes me into the basement and the smell of cat piss and ammonia was overwhelming. At this point I just said fuck it and decide to enjoy the ride. The cat box hadn't been cleaned in 3 to 4 months, and there was a workbench in the basement with duct tape, gloves, torture tools, etc. I opened a small basement window to help clear the cat smell. After getting freaked out by the basement, I figured the fire was ready and prepared the steaks, olive oil, seasoning, and then prepared an avocado/tomato salad. Start grilling the steaks and notice she is not drinking wine or beer. Steaks done. Prepare the table. Border Collie eats my steak. I eat her steak. Her parents drop by. Even though I requested, I don't want to meet anyone. I start to drink heavily at this point. I am too intoxicated to drive 90 miles home at this point, as well. I say I have to do laundry for work the next day. She washes my clothes. She starts to drink wine. After me clothes are done washing, she says that her dryer is broken, and we need to go to her daughter's house to dry them. I start to drink more heavily. We arrive at her daughter's house. Her pit bulls greet me with huge paws to the nutsack. I'm down. Literally down because this huge beast nailed my nads. After a few moments I recovered. Now I have to make small talk. Her granddaughter was like Kim Kardashian crossed with Lady Gaga. At this point, I wanted them all exterminated. All I want at this point is my clothes dry for work in the morning. The clothes dry. We get back to her house, and she starts drinking wine like a madman. I drink very heavily as well because I just want to go to sleep at this point. I have clean, dry clothes for tomorrow. I am happy. All of a sudden she starts flailing about / seizures and passes out on the floor. I am drunk and panicking. I look in her purse and find glucose tablets. Call 911. All of the people in her family show up before the ambulance arrives and commence to bitch at me because she is a diabetic and can't drink alcohol. It was a few years ago, and I had been an active online dater for a while. Long enough to know that people definitely exaggerate and even lie in their dating profiles, and that oftentimes the person turns out to look nothing like their photos. I matched with a guy on Tinder, and he was definitely one of those questionable swipes, where his photos were kind of blurry, but his apparent job and hobbies were interesting enough. So swipe I did, and we ended up making a date to grab a drink on St. Patrick's Day. As an aside, when dating, for the first date I always only make plans to grab a drink or a coffee. Generally a drink, because I do better with a little bit of social lubricant when meeting someone new, so that I can get a quick assessment of the person and then beg off if there is no chemistry, or if they are a creep, or whatever. So, I get to bar where we are to have our date, and the guy is nearly an hour late. He texts me along the way to tell me he had trouble getting a cab, so being the nice person that I am, I wait for him to arrive instead of just blowing him off and leaving, as I was tempted to do. When he finally arrives, he is super flustered and weird and clearly the socially awkward type. He looked sort of like his photos, but had definitely put on a few, if you know what I mean. Whatever, I'm not horribly superficial, no big deal. Anyway, back to the socially awkward. I know we all have our moments, but this guy didn't even seem to be able to order a drink from the server without falling all over himself. I was like, whoa dude, relax, it's just a beer. I do not believe that he was drunk, however, which was my first suspicion. So we finally get our drinks. I've already had one since I was sitting and waiting for him for so long, and exchanging the usual first date info, and I am definitely not into him. He had clearly lied about his job in his profile, and honestly seemed like kind of a weirdo. And I am from Portland, home of the weirdos. This guy was a different breed of weirdo. Either that, or he had some kind of mental disability that I was not able to pinpoint in the small amount of time we had spent together. After about 10 or 15 minutes, the guy says it's St. Patrick's Day. I feel like we should get some whiskey. Do you want some whiskey? I love whiskey and drink it often, so I agreed. The guy, awkwardly, orders 2 shots of Jameson, and as soon as the server brings them over he tells her that we will have 2 more. I'm thinking, okay dude, chill out, because he had previously mentioned that he is a lightweight in the drinking department. Before we take our shots, he looks me in the eye and says, "Whiskey makes me kind of crazy, just so you know." And I was like, thanks for the intel, sort of assuming that he meant like massive quantities of whiskey made him crazy. Well, I was about to find out that he was being completely serious, and I was in for quite the show. We clink our shot glasses together, and before I can get the shot glass to my lips, he asks if I am going to drink the whole thing. Yeah dude, it's just shot, but I confusedly mumble something like, I don't know, maybe? I am not a big shot drinker. Sometimes I drink the whole thing in one swallow. Sometimes I don't. Geez, why do you care? So I take the shot, and he takes about half of his, and when he sees that I drained mine, he yells at me. You liar. You said you were not going to drink the whole thing. You lied to me. I just sort of stared at him, and didn't have a chance to respond because the server was back with our second round of shots. At this point I am starting to think this is maybe a bad idea, but before I can say or do anything, the guy downs the second shot and looks at me triumphantly, as if he has accomplished something super manly and commendable. Me. Yay, you took a shot. What do you want, a freaking cookie? Christ almighty, is this date over yet? Obviously I didn't really say that, but I should have, because then he went berserk for absolutely no reason at all, and if I had at least said that he may have had some mild justification for what was about to happen. The guy got super angry and started yelling and flailing his arms around, telling me that he would kill anyone that came near me. He would fucking shoot anyone that ever tried to come near me or my son. At this point, I was like, holy shit. This guy is psycho, and I start to wonder if he is possibly carrying a gun on his person. I make a move to get up so that I can pay my tab and be done with it. The guy obviously sees me get up, and he just assumes I am going to the bar to get more drinks, and says he needs to go to the restroom. I walk up to the bar and pay my tab, and look to the back of the bar. It was not a large bar, just a standard, open, rectangular room with bathrooms in the back, clearly labeled next to the pinball machines. And I see the guy wandering around in small, drunken circles looking for the bathroom. So, I decide to take pity on this poor fool and walk to the back of the bar and show him where the restroom is. He had used it previously without incident, so I couldn't figure out why finding it again was such an issue. As soon as he gets inside the men's room, I can hear him becoming violently ill, puking his guts out. The people sitting at the bar can hear it and are looking at me like, what the hell is going on? I literally told them, I don't know him. I think he might be crazy. Like really crazy. They continued to look concerned, but went back to their own conversations. At this point, I should have just left, but I waited until the guy came out of the bathroom so that I could say goodbye. He comes out like nothing happened. He acts like a totally different person. All the rage and anger were gone, and just this nice, normal guy comes out speaking in regular tones and sounding not at all like the person that went into that bathroom a few minutes before. I am saying my goodbyes to him, just saying whatever I have to say to get out of this situation immediately, and the dude pops a piece of gum in his mouth, and then grabs me and tries to kiss me. At this point I was really quite glad that I had been doing all those yoga classes, because I practically did a back bend to get my face as far away from his face as possible with him holding on to me. I am not going to kiss you, you gross vomiting crazy person. At this point I actually ran. I full on ran out the door and started sprinting up the street. The bartender was actually around the corner having a cigarette and asked me as I whizzed past if everything was alright, and I yelled back over my shoulder, I'm fine. Just running away from that guy. I got into my car and waited to make sure he wasn't following me, and for the adrenaline to subside a bit, and drove home thinking that was the end of that. Inexplicably, that was not the end. The guy ended up texting and calling me incessantly for weeks, asking what he did wrong and begging to see me again. Those calls and messages went unanswered until I finally blocked him in all ways possible, and that was that. I hope I never see him again. I cannot imagine how he did not have any inkling of what went wrong on that date. Wow, writing this has brought back so many memories of other terrible dates. I could write a book, but this was the first one that came to mind. So I'd been talking to this girl from Tinder. We'd made plans to meet on a number of occasions, and she'd always bailed/ignored texts on the day of the date. I give it one last go at actually getting her to go on a date. She was, from her pictures, a solid 8.5 where I'm charitably a 6, so I figured it was worth it. This time she agrees, and that Saturday, I find myself driving over to her house to pick her up to go for a pub lunch down by the river. On arrival at her house, she comes out looking amazing in a white summer dress, and we set off. Everything goes great. We talk easily, although I get the impression she's exaggerating her job status somewhat. I'd seen the house she was sharing, and it didn't match the kind of role she was claiming to have. But still, who cares, she's gorgeous. Lunch goes well, and we go for a walk along the river holding hands, come back to the pub for another drink, and she asks what I have planned for the rest of the day. When I tell her nothing, she asks if she can stay at my house tonight. I agree, for the reasons already outlined. We finish up and drive back to mine with her massaging my shoulders and lap all the way. While we're going, she informs me that just because she is staying at mine tonight, she isn't easy, and I agree wholeheartedly. Back at mine, we have a look around, make out a little, and then decide the evening is still young and we should go into town. We walk in, and I notice that it's exceptionally hard to walk holding hands with her, as she's always pulling in the wrong direction or adjusting her grip. In town, we have a couple more drinks and a meal. By this time, she's probably had 5 large white wines over 6 hours, so is a little tipsy. This seems to lead to her becoming more touchy-feely and generally more horny. Again, at this point, I'm really not complaining. In the last pub we stop at before heading back to my house, where she assures me she is going to make my cock feel better than it ever has before, I notice she has her phone out while we wait at the bar, and she's reading an email she just received with the title, Living with People with BPD. Immediately things start to make sense, her hot and cold nature in the past, her exaggeration, and the spur-of-the-moment way things have worked out today. But I feel like I'm too far gone to wriggle out completely right now, too drunk to drive her home, and too far from her home to pay for a taxi. We finish our drinks and head back to mine, her hand tugging mine in all sorts of directions on the 15-minute walk. Part of the journey involves walking down a well-lit pathway beside the railway station. As we walk down the path, she tugs my hand backwards. When a couple come the other way down the path, she virtually throws herself into the bush beside it. When we get to the other end, she is almost in tears because she doesn't like enclosed places, because she's lived in some nasty places. With a little reassurance that there are no more enclosed spaces on the way, we start walking again, but now on the 15-minute walk, which she already did in the opposite direction 2 hours ago. She asks every 30 seconds how much further we have to go. At first it's endearing, but it rapidly becomes irritating as every time she asks she stops dead and won't move until I've explained fully exactly how long it's going to take. That part of the ordeal ends when we get back to my house. In the kitchen, she drops her dress in a puddle on the floor and starts making out with me in just her panties before I can even lock the door. I lead her upstairs, and we make out for a while on my bed while she undresses me. At one point she rolls on top of me and tells me, "I want this to go easy peasy, catchy monkey." I agree, despite not having the faintest clue what that means. Then with her next breath, she tells me she's not just going to have wax with me, and if I don't like that I can leave. I don't like to point out we're in my house. I assure her if she doesn't want to have sex, we won't, and at this point I know I will not have sex with we tonight, as doing so, with someone with clear mental issues after they've told you they don't want to, can only lead to horrendous sorts of trouble. We make out some more, with me having to assure her every couple of seconds that it's fine that we aren't going to have sex. I have to be up early in the morning to run her home and to go to work, so we decide to go to sleep. I go into the toilet, and while I'm gone she calls me back into the bedroom, a note of panic in her voice. She points at the broken end of a stick deodorant on my side table and accusingly asks me what it is, clearly thinking it's drugs of some sort. It takes a couple of minutes to assure we that isn't the case, and we settle down for a decent night's sleep. Only kidding, no we don't. Then comes the terrible stuff. She dozes off for 15 minutes, and on waking up again starts making out with me, then pulls my thing out of my shorts and starts sucking on it before really amateurishly trying to tit-fuck me while giving me her best dirty talk, consisting of, "I want to make you come with my pussy big boy." And then she starts to straddle me, wiggling her panties down. As I said, I'd already decided I wouldn't be having sex with her, so I proceed to talk her out of it, which takes 10 minutes, all the while assuring her I'm not made about us not doing it. We go back to sleep again, but now whenever I move, even slightly, she pats my head and says, "Sh," and I swear one time, "Sh, mommy's here," meaning I lay completely stationary until she drops off. Then she flails around in her sleep like a rag doll. When not smacking me in the face with an arm, she's flinging a leg and arm up the wall while gasping and moaning. Eventually I manage to fall asleep, only to wake to find her face inches from mine, her eyes drowsy looking but awake. She proceeds to engage me in a conversation about the seriousness of our relationship, where he insists that I need to commit to her, and that even though I keep saying everything is fine, I'm not doing anything to make sure it is. She also tells me she adores me, and demands to know what I should tell her family about us. I figure the best thing to do is agree with all this, and eventually she lets up, but not before insisting that I need to see a doctor for my moods. And that's basically the way the night goes. I don't sleep for more than 10 minutes at a time, between being hot with flailing limbs, woken by her sitting bolt upright claiming, "I'm dying," because she needs a glass of water, pouring half of that glass of water down my back. Waking me up, calling me Danny, not my name, and telling me how sorry she is. I don't really feel able to get a proper night's rest. Hold on to your hats, people, because this is a doozy. One could say I walked into this, even that it wasn't really a date, because I texted him halfway through work and said, "I'm having a horrible day. Meet me for cocktails downtown after work." We met at my birthday party just a few days before, and I thought we had really hit it off, but I'd already had a specified date that night, and had just met him at the party, and didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. They were both nice guys. Anyways, I digress. He agreed to meet me downtown for cocktails at 5:30 p.m., but about an hour later asked if I could meet him across town where he worked. I should have just said no, but I really thought we had hit it off, and it was just one really out of the way bus ride. Normally I drove, but today I hadn't. I had just moved to a suburb, and the bus was pretty convenient, so I was taking it whenever possible. Since I had intended on getting drinks downtown near the bus stop, I didn't drive. Now I was taking the bus across town after my shitty day, but hey, I like the guy, right? Well, I get there. It's now 6:30 p.m., and he's nowhere near done with work. He's a barber, and he's in the middle off giving a friend a fucking 4-hour-long Jerry curl. That's right, a stinky man perm. I'm hungry, and was expecting cocktails. I'm now wondering why he didn't just tell me it was bad timing and telling me he couldn't do it, but I figured whatever, he really likes me. He probably had the lapse of judgment for the same reason I did in taking the bus all the way out here. Now he promises he'll drive me home and have me home by 9:30 p.m. I'm sort of stuck there now, unless I want to take the bus all the way back downtown, hungry and sober on my Friday after my shitty day. So basically, I'm in this now and dependent on him for my ride home. So, I guess I'm sitting through this perm. Better put on my smiley face. He got beer and smoked me out. Despite that I told him I was hungry, he didn't seem to care at all that I was hungry, but did think buying a higher alcohol beer was totally a good idea. So, I couldn't drink much of the beer before it started to give me a headache. You may be thinking, why didn't you just go and get food? Excellent question. There was a supermarket not too far away. I could have, I suppose. But I didn't. I waited. I waited thinking that after the perm was done he'd have the sense to take me to dinner as a sign of appreciation for coming clear across town after a shitty work day and then sitting and waiting at his work, which I was unprepared for, while he finished a perm. So now I'm starving, a little buzzed, and high with a stomach ache, tired, and with a shitty work day behind me, and the perm is fucking finally almost done. But, just when I think things are about to get good, he says to me, "Oh, BTW, I have to help my friend move tonight. You don't mind, do you?" Say what? We're doing what after this? I mean, I'm all buzzed now. I don't want to bus it all the way back downtown, and then all the way an hour home. I'm in my fucking work clothes, and he's roped me into moving his fucking friend. Now, I'm legitimately annoyed, but I'm stuck here. Okay. Where are we moving him to? Tent City. Oh great. We are moving someone to fucking Tent City. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Seattle area, Tent City is essentially a neighborhood of homeless people who were given a designated area to be homeless in. Are you fucking kidding me? But again, I am now stuck in this. So, we go to pick up his friend. Or so I thought. Next thing I know, he pulls in front of a house. Is this where your friend lives? No. This is my parents' house. Again. Say what? But, I'm a down girl. I'm down to meet the parents, even on a first date. Hell, this could be fun. If I wasn't all starving and high, that is. Am I going to meet anyone? Oh no. You won't meet anyone. He proceeds to get out of the car and start moving stuff from the back of his truck into the back of another truck. I didn't bother to ask why or what, but sure as shit a woman, who was obviously his mother, comes out. It took me a moment to realize she was out there as I was listening to music and fixing my makeup and just frankly stoned. Once I realized his mother was there, I figured the polite thing to do would be to get out of the car and let him introduce us, so I did. Only, he didn't introduce us. Instead, I realized he seemed very annoyed by her presence and was furiously slamming things around with an angry look on his face. He seemed to take no notice of me standing there at all. So I just stood there awkwardly with his mother, who sort of looked me up and down with an face. Understandably. After a few awkward minutes of listening to them bicker back and forth, I introduced myself. She politely shook my hand and said, "Why don't you just take those inside so they don't get rained on?" He says, "Leave me alone, MOM. He's 30 years old, BTW. Oh, get real. You're just being lazy." Then he shoots back, "Why do you always have to be such a fucking bitch?" He proceeds then to yell obscenities at his mother in a tirade for longer than I care to remember. It was so uncomfortable, I literally ran back into the car. I sat that stunned. I couldn't believe he would bitch out his mother, like a fucking 13-year-old, in front of a woman he is trying to impress on a first date. I contemplated my situation. I'm shackled to this person, doomed to help his now homeless friend move to Tent City stoned and starving after watching him scream down his mother. He's clearly nuts, and an idiot with absolutely no regard for my personal interest, comfort, or safety. I should have just gotten a cab at that point, but I was high, so I didn't. He got in his car, and I just pretended everything was okay. He proceeded to tell me all about how he hates his mother. Just what a woman wants to hear on a first date. All about your mother issues. Then we finally go to pick up the friend. On the way I told him I had to pee, but instead of stopping somewhere logical for me to go, he asks his friend to meet us in front of an Albertsons grocery store. I run in and find the restroom and go pee, and when I come back out, still in my work suit by the way, his friend looks me up and down. ADN, you could just read the dismay on his face. Who I asked this stuck-up bitch? Great. Then my date does the absolutely unthinkable. He has a truck with a small back seat. I was going to offer to sit in the back because his friend was much larger than me, But before I could offer, he just flips the seat up and hollers at me to get in the back with a smile. With a smile. Like he doesn't even realize how fucking presumptuously rude and dumb that is. Really? This is how you impress a woman on a first date? Make them take the bus cross town, starve them, subject them to stinky perm, scream your mother down in front of them, rope them into helping your friend move to Tent City in her suit, and then you just expect me to get in the fucking back seat? What the motherfucking fuck? But I'm stuck now. So I get in. I'm starting to think this guy is so out of touch he may really be dangerous. I'm a little scared. Not to mention it's already 8:45 p.m. He promised to have me home by 9:30 p.m., and we haven't even started moving his friend. Fortunately, his friend seemed so not wanting to deal with me, he just postponed until the next day, so we didn't have to move him. After his friend made us wait outside his soon-to-be-not-his apartment for about 15 minutes while he decided what he was going to do, he let us know my date could help him tomorrow. Sigh of fucking relief. Could you please take me home now? He begrudgingly agreed to take me home. To be honest, after seeing him scream down his mother in a fashion rivaling my worst teenage outbursts, I was scared. I was afraid of upsetting him and having him leave me on the side of the road. I was nowhere near a viable bus stop and in a bad neighborhood. I just wanted to go home and have no problems. I got him to take me home, but he refused to leave until I kissed him goodnight. I gave him a quick kiss goodnight and literally ran for the door. My best friend's girlfriend had introduced us. The next time I saw her, she told me, "How come you never returned any of worst date ever's texts? He thought you guys really hit it off." When I told her what had gone down, she was pretty surprised, but not exactly shocked. Apparently, when she explained it to worst date ever, he was completely confused. He had thought the date went amazing, which just goes to show how out of touch he was. This probably isn't the worst story in the world, but it still infuriates me. Went out to a famous Hollywood bar and grill. There's your hint, with a girlfriend. I was 21, she was 19. Met two guys, one a troll, the other super hot, age 22. The latter was gorgeous, funny, gregarious, happened to be Hollywood royalty, or rather, the progeny thereof. Blah blah blah, and of course preferred my friend. Spent the next hour or so chatting her up, running his lines, her giggling and tittering all over the place while I sullenly made small talk with the friend. You know that story. Somewhere during the evening, though, he decided to set his sights on me, and young as I was pretty suspicious, realizing he probably saw me as the easier mark. I mean, there was no way a guy like this was going to choose me, 5 feet 2 inches, 10 pounds overweight, relatively attractive, but not overly so, over my friend, a tall willowy blonde who bore a striking resemblance to a then famous young model. So when he asked for my number at the end of the night, I hesitantly gave it to him and assumed I'd never hear from him. Couldn't figure out his play. My friend and I both assumed he was either playing some sort of game to get closer to her, or wanted to fuck me and throw me away. He called the next day and told me he wanted to take me out on a proper date. Told me how charming and lovely I was, and he wanted to prepare a meal for me and show me a night on the town. I informed my friend of this, and pleasantly surprised, she encouraged me to go. I was skeptical. I'd never been on a proper date before. I was much more the hang out and drink type, and didn't believe this dude was actually interested in me. Still, due to the uniqueness of the situation, I agreed, and we made plans for me to come up to his place the following Friday night. I showed up to his place, a spacious condo in Beverly Hills, where he greeted me at the door with a rose and a kiss on the cheek. It kinda grossed me out. I did not trust this shit at all. Immediately felt like he was a huge fucking phony. I might be the only woman on earth who recoils at the sign of a gentleman, but that I did. Still, of course, I entered to find 2 place settings at his marble table. This lovely meal he made for me consisted of a salad made of iceberg, baby tomatoes, and Italian dressing. After we ate, me thinking, really? All the while, he suggested we go out for a cocktail. More affectation, more phoniness. What 22-year-old dude on the planet uses the term cocktail? Unless he's trying to seem suave and sophisticated to the rube he intends to fuck at the end of the night. Again, I was grossed out, but agreed. We walked to some bar, no idea where he made a big show of talking to the doorman like a buddy, to show me he was a regular, and some sort of very big deal. We go in, he orders me a tequila sunrise, himself some sort of whiskey, and we maneuver through the crowd to find a space at the end of the bar. We stood there and chatted, which consisted of him bragging about his father, grandfather, and their money, until the drinks were drained, at which point he suggested we go back to his place. We were in the bar for about 10 minutes. So we leave. We get back to his place. I stand just inside the door with my coat on, unsure of what to do next, as he excuses himself to use the restroom. A few minutes later, I hear him calling me from a corner of the condo. Followed his voice to, of course, his bedroom, where he was lying spread-eagled in his red bikini panties. He gestured to his dick and instructed me to take off my coat and come enjoy. I said, "No, I don't think so," to which he responded, "Really? I make you a nice dinner and take you out for a drink and you don't think so? Well, your coat is already on, so have a nice night." I said, "You're kidding, right?" "Not in the least. See you around." I turned on my heel and left. And that was it. My big date with the son of a wealthy Hollywood producer. Amazing. I'm 15 minutes late for a date in the peninsula at a bar I've never been to in a city I've never been in. The guy I'm meeting seems like a functional human being, one with a good job at Stanford, and a real, legitimate LinkedIn. We've only talked online through an app called Tinder. I'm wearing a blue dress and heels, and I've spent more time on my hair and makeup than I'd like to admit. This is my first date since I kicked out the husbeast in May. I walk into the bar expecting to see him, but it's totally empty except for the bartender. I sit, pulling out my phone. "Can I get a gin and juice, please?" I'm taking my first sip and debating on text messaging him when my date throws open the front door and strides in. His man heels clack on the tile, and he sidles in next to me, all business. He's significantly shorter than I am, which is a real feat, as I top out just over 5 foot. Red flag number 1. He swore he was 5'4". He orders a drink. "Do you want to go sit down?" he asks, gesturing to the booths lining the back wall. I grab my drink and follow him. He skips the pleasantries and fakes a yawn to stretch his arm up and over my shoulders. He's asking me some vaguely esoteric questions. Picture a box. "Describe it to me. How big is it? What is it made of?" And I'm sucking up gin through a straw that's decidedly too small when he reaches his hand out and places it possessively on my knee. He runs his fingers in tight, concentric circles. It's an intimate move, one you'd initiate with someone you've known, and probably seen naked on more than one occasion. I'm feeling decidedly uncomfortable. My legs are crossed, and so are my arms. "So," he looks over at me with a lilting grin on his face. "Have you ever had sex in a hearse?" "Excuse me?" I choke through the gin, at an utter loss for words. Is this what passes for dating in 2013? I stand abruptly. I've definitely got to pee. I make a beeline for the bathroom with my phone already in my hand. "Ollie, you better fucking pick up," I mutter, reaching for the door handle. The rings seem to last forever. Come on, come on, come on." There's a brief silence, then a confused, "Hello?" "Oh, thank God, Oliver." I need an organ donation call, stat. Oliver is my supervising embalmer and one of my best friends. Without missing a beat, he laughs. "Bad date? You have no idea. This is the worst." "No problem. I'll call you back in 4 minutes. Change my name in your phone." "I love you, adore you, you're the light of my life," I exclaim before hanging up. I change his contact info to the name of my funeral home, look at myself wide-eyed in the mirror, and reach for the door handle. My date is still sitting in the corner when I approach. "Do you want another drink?" he asks. "I'd really like to take you to a private beach around here." I can't imagine anything I'd like less than to be completely alone with this man. It sounds like it could quickly become vaguely day-trapey. Before I open my mouth to answer, the phone rings. I pick it up, mouthing, "Work, sorry." I head for the door, and he follows closely, eavesdropping. "California Organ Donation Network," intones Oliver. "Is this Heather Hernandez? We've worked with you before, and it looks like you're the go-to person for this funeral home. I've got a full donation for tonight that needs to be done in your prep facility. Long bones, tissue, and skin. So it's gonna be a long night, is what you're telling me? Probably 8 hours, at a guess." I manage to keep a straight face through the rest of the conversation. As I hang up, I shake my head at my date, looking crestfallen. "So sorry, but I've actually got to head back to the East Bay. A funeral director is always on call, Yano?" He walks over to his car and slams the door, tires screeching as he pulls out. I've stopped counting the red flags because there's too many of them. As I head back into the bar for another drink, I wonder why I put so much effort into blowing him off. Next sucky date, I'll be quick to just tell the dude to quit being a creep. It was my first date. I remember it like one might remember being ass-raped by a rhinoceros. I worked at a Chinese restaurant and didn't make much money. I had saved 2 paychecks because I wanted to ask out this girl in my class. 3 days before the weekend, I ask her out to dinner and a movie. I'm 16. So is she. She's skinny, smiles embarrassed smiles, really meek, quiet, but she was beautiful. My brother and sister-in-law are my guardians at this point in my life. I swear to God my sister-in-law was trying to cock-block me. They wanted me to look so nice for my first date. I told them it was a girl into heavy metal, not some pale farmer's daughter who only listens to Christian music. They wouldn't hear no about it. My sister-in-law made me wear a sweater vest on the date. Up till this point, my only experience with sweater vest was to tease people who wore them. She even tried to get me to wear a necktie, and at this point, I was noped the fuck out. I said I was under no circumstances going in public dressed like that. We compromised to me just wearing the sweater vest. I don't have a license yet, so my brother is the one choffering us to the movies. We were going to eat at Ruby Tuesdays across the street after the movie. It's go time. We pull up to her house. She's wearing her toys in the attic black t-shirt and blue jeans with holes in the knees and black and red canvas tennis shoes. Her hair is down and rippling like ramen noodles, only prettily. She looks at me and is turning red, trying to keep from laughing in my face. My response was to mutter, "Yeah, I know," morosely. I'm pretty sure my expression rather closely resembled the ashamed look of a golden retriever who's just shit on the living room rug and has gone off to die of embarrassment. We go to the movie. Who do we run into? My date's best friend. She informs me that she has a date with 2 friends and that she can't join us. I was relieved at this, not realizing that she was there on purpose and that this was referred to as a safety date to make sure I wasn't some creepy jock type that was going to roofie her and have my way with her. We enjoyed the movie a lot. Afterwards, we crossed the parking lot and headed for the restaurant. I had calculated how much money I was going to need to pay for our meals and dessert and should have had $15 left over. I did some research. We get over to Ruby Tuesday. We get a table in the corner by the front window and we're talking and joking and making fun of my sweater vest, when who shows up out of nowhere? Safety bitch. She joins us without asking, declares she's hungry too. Tells me, "You got a job, right?" I say I do, so she orders herself some food. We talk amongst us, and I want is for the girl to go away. I want to crash and burn on my own, not in front of witnesses. I struggle through them whispering and looking at me while laughing, and when the waiter brings our food, I'm relieved. We eat. I think everything is going well despite the intrusion of safety bitch. I look at the clock on the wall and realize my brother will be there at any time to pick us up. I make a comment of that. Safety bitch gets up, hugs my date, and says she'll see us at school on Monday. She leaves. We talk for 10 minutes in the restaurant when I see my brother arrive. I call for the check. The waiter brings it, and it's $45. My face goes white. I'm pulling out my wad of cash and counting it out, but I only have $36. I was so embarrassed. My date pulls 20 out of her purse and adds it to my own. We pay and tip and are walking out, not even holding hands. She's laughing at me. I don't know what went wrong. I went through our meals again in my head, plus tax, plus drinks. I couldn't figure out what went wrong. How could this happen? We're riding back to her house, my brother driving. He's doing his best to embarrass me in front of her. She's laughing her ass off at my red-faced look of horror, as nothing is off limits to my brother back then. We drop her off, and she shakes my hand. She shakes my hand. Just shook it like we worked in an office somewhere. I go home with my brother. I don't say a word. He's teasing me still. I get home. My sister-in-law is asking how the date went, but there's like a sly smile on her face. I lie and say fine. I go to my room, change out of the horrid sweater vest, then go to bed. It's 3 in the morning, and I can't figure out what went wrong. I'm struggling. I went over the cost of the meals again and again. It didn't make sense. Then I realized why you already realize. Safety bitch left and stuck me with the bill for her meal. It's 3 in the morning. I call my date. She's still awake. I tell her that I finally figured out why I didn't have enough for dinner. She's laughing and tells me she already knew why. Her friend had asked to borrow money for dinner, and that was why safety bitch left without paying. But instead of telling me, my date thought it would be fun to watch me squirm. She said she never told me because she wanted to see how long it'd take me to figure out what went wrong. I didn't find it as funny as her. I found out 10 years later that my sister-in-law had been molested as a teen by her date, and she made me wear the sweater vest to guarantee I didn't get lucky. She did indeed sabotage me. My brother, who would have teased me anyway, did it more than usual because his wife, my sister-in-law, made him. She did not want me ruining some young girl's life by having sex as a teenager. Joke's on her. Me and my date ended up fighting over this a few days later, and to get back at her, I fucked her best friend, safety bitch, in the drafting room during shop class. I hate when people interfere in shit that doesn't concern them. My first date at the age of 16. I already went out with a girl before, but since I met her over mutual friends, this was the first time I had to get to know someone by going on a date. She seemed like a nice girl. We both were in our metal/rock music phase, and so had lots to talk and laugh about. One late evening in December, I got a message from her saying that she'd like to meet and drink a beer together. She actually called it a date. It was about -5 to 10 degrees Celsius, already dark. I had no one to drive me there, around 7 kilometers, and public transportation wasn't available at this hour. Like most 16-year-olds, I was naive and typical teenage boy desperate. That said, got some layers of clothing and went out secretly. At the time I arrived at the bar, my nose was near numb, and she was nowhere to be seen. I thought it would be rude to order a drink without her, so I told the waiter and sat down. After the first hour, he made me get out so he could have the seats for paying customers. Another hour later, she arrived by car with a wide and intense grin on her face. She suggested to go to another bar cause the one we were standing in front was too crowded. Since I just wanted to feel my body again, I agreed. After heating up, my mood began to get better, and we ordered our drinks. The conversation was lively, and back then I thought this would work out, and I could enjoy the rest of the night. Oh, I was wrong. Half through the first drink, she told me to go to her place because we could talk better there and her parents aren't home. Even teenage me knew what this means. So another walk, another 5-ish kilometer. After the first, she told me she was cold, so I gave her my coat. Then her neck was cold, so I gave her my scarf, SRSLY. This girl wasn't dressed for the weather. Again, half frozen, we reached her place and went in. As she said, no one else was home, and after some talk about generic stuff, we started to make out. At this point, 16-year-old me would have still called this date an astounding success, but like you may have already guessed, the front door opened in the exact second we were moving over to the giant couch in the living room. She panicked, took me to her room as fast as she could, pushed me in her cramped closet, and told me to hide in there. I swear I don't make this shit up. I only heard pretty loud and aggressive mumbling in there, but her parents seemed to know her plays already, and found me after a mere minute or so. Needless to say, her father kicked me out, literally, while I still heard her mother arguing with the girl about how she girl brings another guy home every other week and she mother wouldn't pay for pregnancy tests anymore. I can't tell you people anymore what bugged me the most. That I couldn't get laid, that I just seemed to be disposable, or that I had to walk all the way home without my jacket or scarf. Another story. So, I went out for drinks with this girl who I've gone out with a bunch. We have a great time, have some beers, eat some nachos, and have a good time. After we finish up at the pub, she suggests we get a bottle of rum and some Slurpees and continue drinking in a local park. It's a nice night and all. Anyways, we drink the rum and hang out. I realize that she's getting pretty drunk and I should probably just walk her home. We weren't all that far from her house. As I am walking her home, we cut through a post-secondary campus and she just has a panic attack, like full-on hyperventilating and incomprehensible sort of panic attack. I try calming her down. She just keeps screaming at me to fuck off, but I'm not just going to leave her there, so I just sit there next to her. Out of nowhere, she just snaps and screams at me, "Get away from me," and she leaves her purse on the ground and runs away. I pick up her purse and go to track her down because she's really drunk and I just want her to get home. I find her collapsed in a corner. I say, "All right, let's get you back, go your house." She screams at me again. They're following us. Well, at this point I don't know what's going on, but I'm determined that I'm not letting her be by herself at this moment and try to coax her into going home again. We continue walking, but she's got full-on crazy eyes and is muttering about spies being around us and that we are being watched. As we continue this journey, she starts screaming at me, "You don't know what it's like to be gang raped." I know. Now keep in mind we are now walking down a street with people around. I ask her to calm down. She grabs me by my face and says, "You need to follow me if you want to live." I tell her she needs to calm down again, and maybe suggest that I might actually have to call for medical assistance. Well, she goes further off the deep end at this point, starts shoving me around, almost pushes me into traffic. My glasses did come off and fly into traffic and get destroyed at this point. Eventually, I do convince her to head home. However, I was berated the entire time, and she keeps screaming crazy shit at me. As I am almost at her house, she grabs my face and says, "What's my name?" I respond with her name, and she says, "That's not my name. I am Alexandra Romanoff." Say it. I don't want to get murdered, so I say her name back, and she keeps making me say her new name. Eventually she grabs my face again and says, "Know my name if you want to live. Live it, breath it, speak it." At this point we are finally at her house. She tells me that I am going to die on my way home, and that it was meant to be. She got into her house. I went home. Story 6. Buddy of mine wanted to get in the game, but is super cheap, so he was using plenty of fish, mistake 1. Connects with a chick who seemed down to clown, so he, mistake 2, invited her to his house. She immediately is upset that he doesn't have Tito's vodka, and that's the only thing she drinks. So she insists they go to the liquor store and get some. Now my buddy is 50-50 that he's going to get robbed, but the other 50% is a good chance of getting laid. So he compromises by telling her to drive and leaves his wallet behind. They get into her car, and there's no seat in the passenger side. She says she has a huge dog, so she took the seat out and just sit in the back. And they head off to the liquor store. During the drive, he comes to the understanding that this woman is drunk. He's still holding out for the sex possibility, though they get to the liquor store, and it's too late, closed. The chick says, "I know a store they're open late, but the liquor stores are all state stores, they all have the same hours." She insists she knows a place, and he's captive in the back seat. She gets on the interstate, and a while goes by in silence, and he eventually asked, "Where are we going?" And she screams in terror. She'd forgotten he was in the back seat. She tells him they're going to the liquor store in a city 30 minutes away. Now he's almost given up on the failing hope of getting some strange, and just wants to live. Asks if they can just go home, and she screams again. Forgot he was in the car again. So he tried to keep a full conversation, going to keep her awake and aware of him, and they eventually get to the destination magic open liquor store. It was closed. She insists it's open and goes to the door and starts pounding on it. Now comes the peanut gallery. Some Mexican guys are sitting in a truck drinking beers and yell at her, "That's closed. You want a beer?" And she starts yelling racial slurs at them, and not even the right ones for Mexicans. Now 3 Mexicans and a drunk/high/bipolar chick are trading profanities. And my buddy finally reached sex chance equals 0% point and just walked away. Turned around the corner and sat down at a bus stop and called me. It's like 1 a.m. on a work night, and I see the call and like, this can't be good. So I drive to get him. He tells me this whole long story that I honestly can't remember half of. It was much worse. Then we drank at his place until dawn and called in sick to work. On top of this story, here is another. Not a date, but rather a girl I was hooking up with at a party, and it's kinda long, but I just think the whole thing was so weird it's worth sharing. We were in her kitchen and we begin to make out, and suddenly she starts talking about how her best friend is totally in love with her, but she keeps kissing me while saying so. Then she elaborates by saying, "Yeah, my best friend is outside in the party," and I'm like, whoa. Well, should we stop? She goes, no, and I'm kinda uncomfortable anyways because I've been the best friend and I kinda wanna stop. She goes, no, it's totally fine, and then keeps going on about it. Lick really going into detail, and tells me the whole story about how she liked him, but then she didn't, and I'm like, okay. And before I can decide what to do, the best friend walks into the kitchen. He goes, "I'm sorry," and then walks out. Normal, uncomfortable situation, right? Well, this happens at least 3 times. Like, he keeps walking in and going, "Sorry." Dude is clearly drunk at this point. So the 3rd time I'm like, "Nah, dude, you guys clearly need to talk. I'll just be outside, you figure out stuff." And the girl holds my hand and makes me stay, but then starts talking to him, and like, she wants me to be a 3rd neutral party or something. She begins to tell him that she didn't like when he did so, and she asks me, "What do you think?" while holding my arm tightly and not letting me go. I said fuck it and just end up playing along and actively listening to them and trying to help them. I'm a teacher, so I guess I'm good at that. Long story short, I managed to get out of that situation eventually. We go outside, and a few hours later people start leaving, so I go back to her apartment to grab my stuff. Of course, she comes back with me, and now we're all alone in the apartment. We go back to the kitchen and things start getting hot again, when suddenly we hear a knock on the door. And guess whose voice we hear outside? Yeah, of course, her best friend. So I'm like, okay, yeah, no, that's it, bye. And as I'm about to leave, she stomps her feet on top of the couch, putting her leg between me and the door, and asks me, "So what are we?" And I'm like, nothing. We just kissed, and listen, I'm sorry, I just went through a breakup, so I'm not really looking for anything more than that right now. I'm sorry if that disappoints you. And that was true, but also I didn't want to get into that whole mess at all. She goes, but can we still mess around some more? And before I can say anything, the best friend knocks again. So we open the door and he is there, and then he says sorry again, and I say, chill, I'm leaving anyways. And before I can go down the stairs, the girl calls me up and goes, my friend is too drunk. Can you make sure he gets home safe? And since I can't for the life of me say no to that, I end up in a cab with him 5 minutes later. During the trip, he starts telling me how much he loves her, but that she hurt him, and so on and so on. And I can totally understand the guy because, again, I've been in his position, but at this point I just want to get home and forget about the whole mess. But I have to make sure he gets home safe, so we stop in front of his house, and as he is about to leave, he turns around and says, please take good care of her, she is happier with you. He gets off the car and walks off into the night. A month goes by, and I see both the girl and her best friend walking down the street holding hands as a couple. Story 17. I was in my early 20s and nowadays would have not put up with any of the shit I did, lol. He picked me up from my house. I walked out wearing heels, and he made me go back inside and put on flats because apparently I was taller than him with heels on. Nowadays, that is when the date would be over for me, lol, but I did it. We drive to the restaurant. It's a casual spot, kind of like a pub, but with fancier food. We sit down and order our drinks, and there's a table next to us of like 6 guys, all wearing jeans and camo or plaid, hillbilly-looking types. My date starts loudly talking shit about how ugly their clothes are, and the guys keep looking over at us like WTF. I told my date to stop because he was about to get a country boy beat down, lol. The waitress comes to take our order, and he orders for me, and it's something I don't want, so I say oh no thanks and order something else. After the waitress left, he was literally red in the face, fuming, not saying anything, and just staring at me. I awkwardly drank my beer until he said, don't you ever do that to me again, and launched into a rant about how I embarrassed him in front of everyone. He was being so loud and everyone was staring at us, and I just wanted to melt into my seat, lol. The food comes and he asks for the check. I offered to pay my half because I did not want to ever see him again, and I didn't want to give him a reason to feel like I owe him something. He goes off on me again about how I need to be trained to be a better woman, how I'm embarrassing him again, just tearing into me. I excuse myself to go to the bathroom, which is across the building and around a corner out of view. I was frantically texting everyone I knew trying to get a ride home and planned on leaving without him seeing. One of the country boys from the table next to us followed me to the bathroom and knocked on the door asking if I was okay. I came out and spoke to him, and he offered to drive me home, so I took it. I get in this guy's old beat-up truck, and he gives me a cigarette and takes me home and makes sure I got into my house before he took off. Lovely guy. 5 minutes later, my phone starts blowing up, and it's my date. I guess he started losing his shit when he realized I was gone and found out I got a ride home from one of the guys he was insulting earlier. Accuses me of being a whore and sleeping with this guy. I blocked his number. He shows up at my house. Now he's banging on the front door so hard I'm afraid it's going to come off its hinges. I lived with 3 male roommates at the time, but none of them were home, so I called the house group chat and begged for one of them to come home. Thankfully, my one roommate was just down the road, and he came right home. He's like 6 feet 4 inches, 300 pounds, so he scared my terrifying date away. After that, he would randomly show up at our house and bang on the door and try all the windows to see if any of them were unlatched. Looking back, I should have just called the fucking cops. Thankfully, he gave up on me after about a month. Probably found a new woman to terrorize. Another story here. Guy from school asked me out to dinner. I agreed. He said he wanted to surprise me with the location, which I initially thought was kind of sweet. He also insisted in picking me up in his car. I was young and didn't have reliable transportation, so I agreed. Once we were a few minutes down the road, he announced the name of the restaurant and that it was an hour and 15-minute drive away. I said that was kind of far, but he waved me off saying he had a reservation and it would be fine. I realized I was trapped, so I rolled with it, thinking how bad could it be since I knew him from class? My mistake. Cut to me ordering my main course. He interrupted me mid-sentence and proceeded to change my order to something else entirely, insisting I'd like it better. No other reason or rationale. I protested. He refused to listen. I protested again, noting I didn't like some of the ingredients in that dish. He repeated his changed order and directed the server to ignore me as I continued protesting. The server stood there, shifting her eyes back and forth, unsure whose direction to follow. It was turning into an argument, and I felt bad for the server, so I acquiesced. Another big mistake. His selection was horrible. Inedible, really. I didn't finish it. He got mad and told me I was wasting food he was paying for. I responded by offering to pay my half of the bill. He refused, saying gentlemen always pay. Gentlemen also respect women's meal selections, but whatever, dude. Don't say I didn't offer. So he paid and we leave. He suggested we go see some sights in the area, but I tell him I don't feel well and just want to go home. He huffs but agrees. On the long drive back home, he interrupts the silence by asking, "So how many people have you slept with?" Totally out of the blue, no context or introduction. I was completely caught off guard. After a few moments, I managed to coolly reply that was none of his business. His response? "Oh, you must be a slut then." What? Wow. Just wow. Crickets the rest of the ride back. He asked me out for a second date a few days later. I said I didn't think that was a good idea. His response? "That's okay, I wasn't really interested anyway." He then spent the rest of the semester making snarky comments toward me and talking loudly about other girls he was dating whenever I was within earshot. Fun times. Story 15. For warning, this is going to be a long one. So a few years back, I went on a date with a guy I met on Tinder. I know this should have been my first red flag. I was 23 at the time, and he was 22. We had been talking for a while, and he seemed normal enough, so when he asked me on a brunch date, I said yes. He wanted to pick me up, and I stupidly agreed. So it all started off normal. The conversation was okay, and he was nice, but I wasn't really feeling it. Well, come the end of our meal, he says that he has a few more hours before he has to work and wants to keep hanging out. I couldn't come up with a good excuse not to, so instead of taking it back to a house, I suggested I show him around town a little. He was new to the area and said okay. So, after driving around for about an hour and a half, his truck starts overheating. He jumps out and checks under the hood and realizes that he got a hole in his radiator. So we head back to my place, and I told him that he could hang out for a bit and wait for his truck to cool down a bit, so he could get back home, but I had to work on a few things. He comes in, and I offer him a beer since I was going to have one while I worked on painting some cornhole boards for work. I turned on my TV and let him play some music. After I'm working outside for about an hour, I come back inside to find him completely trashed and bawling on my couch. He had finished the rest of the beer in my fridge and helped himself to a bottle of vodka he had found and had almost polished off a brand new bottle. I just froze. I ended up stepping back outside and called my mom to ask for advice. She could hear him wailing and singing at the top of his lungs in the background. I couldn't just send him on his way, as he was way too drunk to drive. So after talking to my mom for a bit, I went inside and told him I had some errands to run and I would drop him off at his place. He asked if he could just hang out at my house while I was gone. I told him hell no, as I actually know this man. So finally I get him to get his shoes on and out of the house, and he said he needs just a minute to say bye to his truck. He then proceeded to talk to his truck for 5 minutes before I could get him in my car. I drive him home with him, insisting on blaring the music as loud as it can go. When we got there, I told him I could stop by before work tomorrow and drive him back to his car. He said okay, but he needs help getting inside. Mind you, this man is like 6 feet 4 inches, and I'm a solid 5 feet 1 inch. So I get out and have to help this man get inside and lay him on his bed. He starts confessing that he is so happy I'm putting up with him, and that most everyone else wouldn't do this for him. I just say okay, and tell him I see him in the morning. It's like 5 o'clock at this point, so I think I'm done with this chaos until morning. I run my errands and get home around 9, and start putting away groceries. I had left my phone on the charger in the living room and didn't think anything of it. I came back to my phone about 30 minutes later to 10 missed Snapchat calls. I never gave him my real number, and 4 voice messages. I listened to them, and all of them are him screaming at me to give him his truck back now, or he's going to freak out, and that he's walking to my house now to get his shit back. Honestly, it was all very threatening. So I freak out a little, and all of a sudden he's calling again. I pick up, and he immediately starts screaming the same things. I just asked him why he thought I was stealing his truck when I told him I would bring it back in the morning. Well, apparently he didn't remember that and then asked for a ride the rest of the way. At this point, I just said yes so I could get this over with and get him out of my life. I called my mom and had her on the other line the whole time, just in case this guy tried to pull anything crazy. So I get him back to my place, and he asks if he could come grab his wallet that he left there. Again, my dumbass said fine instead of just getting it myself. So he comes in and then asks if he can just stay cause he's still drunk. I finally lose my shit. I ask him why the hell he started walking to my house in the first place if he couldn't fucking drive, and what his plan was. His response, I was just going to sleep in my truck. I told him to fuck off, and that I was done, and he and his precious truck needed to get off my property now. He finally leaves, but not before asking for another drink, and me screaming at him to get out. I sit down and just start bawling, praying this was all over, and I would never have to deal with him again. Well, I was so wrong. The next morning my work I relay this to my co-workers, and just ask them to let me know if they see him or his truck hanging around. Then my bartender comes up and said there was a call for me. I answer, and lo and behold, it's him. I ask him why the hell he was calling, and apparently he went and got himself arrested the night before. My guess would be drunk driving, and wanted me to bail him out. I told him hell no. I then called the prison themselves and asked to be notified when he is released cause I don't trust that he wouldn't try to contact me or just show up. So they set me up with text notifications, and I go on my way. He got released like 3 days later and did try to text me, but I just ignored them. I didn't want to block him, just in case he did try anything. I would have all the messages saved. Luckily, after those few texts, I never heard from him again, and I immediately deleted Tinder off my phone. I've been using Tinder for 3 to 4 years now, and I've always been very lucky. However, yesterday was a different story. Climax of the story. I'm in my date's bedroom. She's lying on her bed, drugged and intoxicated. She takes off her top, now topless, grabs my neck and starts kissing me. Her mom, who is standing there, leaves the room to give me some privacy to do what can only be considered a date rape. Flashback a day earlier, we matched on Tinder. I suggested we skip the long chats and go for a drink. She suggested we chat on the phone first. We did for an hour, and it was nice. Some laughs, some flirting, and we agreed to spend the next morning at the beach. We met. Everything is going great, and all signs are saying we'll end up having crazy sex very soon. Left the beach, had lunch, and then agreed to go back to my place. She said she needed to pass by her place to change and take some stuff. No problem. She introduced me to her mom, her dog, her cat, and some neighbors. Getting too cozy for a Tinder date. Then she said, change of plans. My mom is going to spend the night at my brother's place. Would you mind spending the night here instead? I thought, why not? I'm getting lucky, so I don't care. She started preparing dinner, and I started drinking. Turned out her mom is going nowhere, and I had too much to drink. I can't drive back home. So I'm stuck with them for the night. That's when things started to get crazy. Dinner table had prawns and oysters with bacon, which I hate. So I started eating the prawns when my date offered some oysters. I politely declined and said I was happy with the prawns. She insisted so much it got awkward, so I took it. She asked me if I liked it. I smiled and said nothing. She started getting angry and yelled at me that I should be more direct and speak up. I told her I didn't like it. It might be good, but it's not for me. She started yelling at me and demanding an explanation why I don't like it. That's when her mom jumped in and tried to defuse the situation. To my surprise, my date grabbed the prawns plate and threw it across the room straight into the wall. Then she stormed away into her room. That's when her mom explained to me that she'd been in and out of rehab because of depression with 2 suicide attempts, and that she was on medication and was not supposed to have any alcohol. Now I'm feeling really sorry for her. She came out of her room, laughing as if nothing happened, and brought some dessert and more champagne. Suddenly, she stood up and challenged me into a fight. MMA fight. She knew I've done MMA for over 10 years. She started throwing punches at my chest and stomach, and then to my face. I was blocking or slipping all punches and asking her to stop. She got really vicious and started adding kicks to her attack. I grabbed her arms, put my weight on her, and took her to the ground. She totally collapsed and lay there unconscious. I shouldn't drive back home because I had 7 to 8 drinks. I can't take a taxi and leave my car because there's a big chance she'll trash it. But I decided, fuck it, I'll drive back home. I carried her to her bed when she opened her eyes, smiled, and then all of a sudden took her top off, grabbed my neck and started kissing me. Her mom, who was standing there, left the room to give me privacy to do what can only be considered a date rape. I pushed her away and started walking backwards out of the room when she gave me a final kick to the stomach goodbye. Not crazy enough? I woke up this morning to a few missed calls from my date and a couple of messages with a casual apology and a couple of ideas for our second date. Another bad date story to add. What I noticed first was the pile of tiny plastic eyedroppers that was building up in front of us while we sat side by side at the bar. I don't know why it took me so long to see this. And I don't know how he fit all those little bottles in his pants pocket. There must have been 100 of them, easily. I'm not kidding you. Literally every 30 seconds or so, he'd pull out 2 eyedroppers and very swiftly tilt his head back and lubricate his eyeballs. He was so fast, and we were having such engrossing discussions, that it took me at least a half hour to even realize what he was doing. I politely asked for an explanation. He told me he had had eye surgery for a serious eye condition he developed, and while that surgery saved his eyesight, he was left with this burden of watering his eyes approximately twice per minute. Poor fellow. Being a contact lens wearer, I can certainly relate to the discomfort of dry eyes. It sucks, but I was a bit taken aback by the fact that he seemed to expect the bartender to clean up the eyedroppers. I hope he left him a large tip for that. The poor bartender had to collect them all with a napkin each time the pile built up to roughly 2 inches in height. I'd say there were about 4 piles over the course of the evening. But that's not all. Towards the end of the date, I pulled out my phone to see 6 missed calls from my mother. I knew something was horribly wrong, because my grandmother had recently fallen ill and was at a nursing home. I excused myself and called my mother back, fearing the worst. My grandmother had died an hour ago. Tearfully, I went back inside and told him I had to go. I hope he didn't think it was an excuse for me being freaked out by the eyedroppers. My grandmother really did pass away. It may also have been the weirdest date ever for him, given that I had to bag out of it due to a death in my family that occurred during the actual date. We are now married. Just kidding. I never saw him again after that night, though he did send me a few texts to cheer me up in the ensuing days. He was a really nice guy. Story 14. I never get bored of telling this one. A few years ago I met this guy whom I'll call Matt. Matt and I had some mutual friends. He invited me to a concert. We lived in different towns, about 15 kilometers apart. The concert was to take place in a third town, about 15 kilometers away from the town he lived in. After the concert, we would go back to his town, and I would sleep at my best friend's house. They both lived in the same town. So Matt comes and picked me up. I had a bag with a few things like pajamas and clothes for the next day. I leave my bag in his car and go to his apartment, because he insisted on me meeting his mom. This was the first red flag for me, because why would you like your mom to meet me on our first date? I ignored it and went to see his mom. For the whole agonizing hour we were there, she talked about his ex, how good-looking she was, how smart she was, how funny, and so on and so forth. She concluded with, "I don't really understand why they broke up." I knew the girl. I didn't like her, which made it even more cringe for me. They had been together for 2 weeks, so it wasn't really that big. I stood through all this tirade stoically, just smiled and nodded until he was ready to leave. I left my bag in his car and left for the concert. I couldn't drink anything as I was on antibiotics for a dental problem, so I gave him my free shot, which all the 15 first girls at the concert received. Besides that shot, he drank a beer. Because of this little quantity of alcohol, he was absolutely wasted, slurring his words, saying stupid things, not walking properly, etc. The concert took place in a bar, and he stopped the concert in the middle of it, telling the band they couldn't sing properly. They gave him a microphone, because he wanted to prove to them he was better. They put 3 instrumentals for him, but not one of them was good. I felt really embarrassed, so I went outside to smoke, not really knowing what to do. While I was smoking a cigarette, one of the singers came outside and started talking to me, mainly making funny remarks about my date. I told him I was sorry for his behavior, but the guy was cool and okay with it. At that moment, Matt came outside and proceeded to accuse me of cheating on him with the singer, because why else would we make conversation? He told me I would have to make it home on my own, and I told him that was okay. I didn't really feel safe going home with him. I took my phone out of my pocket to find someone who could take me home, but my battery was dead. I could not find a charger for my phone in all that bar, so it became a problem, because I didn't want to leave with him, but I also couldn't find any other way back home, as there weren't any buses or trains. One of his friends assured me it was okay. They would safely take me to my friend's house. So we eventually left. We reached his town, and the driver, Matt's friend driving Matt's car, stopped at the end of the street on which my best friend lived. I didn't have time to get out of the car, because Matt, who was in the back seat, caught my hand. I was in the passenger's seat, and told the driver I would spend the night at his place. The driver started arguing with him, and that was when I saw a police car parked right across from us. I said, "If I don't get out of this car this very minute, I will shout as loud as I can." The driver panicked, took Matt's hand away from me. I exited the car, and I was happy. Just a few more steps were between me and my friend's house. But things couldn't stop there, could they? While I was crossing the street, I heard a car door closing behind me. I looked back. Matt was out of the car, coming after me. I started running, knocked on the police car's window, and the policemen exited their car. They asked me what was wrong. I told them. I gave them my ID, and they told me to wait in their car. Matt started shouting at them, calling me stupid, telling them I was a D*UG addict, I was a liar, and so on and so forth. The policeman could see he was drunk, could see I was being calm and eloquent, so they soon realized who to trust. They fined him for talking badly to and about me in front of them. He threatened them they would hear from his lawyer. They just ignored him and got back into the car. They could see where I lived in my ID, so they asked me if I wanted them to take me home. I didn't want to cause any further trouble, so I told them it was okay. I could just go to my friend's house. They insisted on driving me the short distance. Bless their kind souls. I spent the night at my friend's place, and the next day, I realized my bag was still in his car. I thought about abandoning it. It contained some clothes, some makeup, my hair straightener, and my antibiotics. But my friend told me she would send her mom to take it back from him, being sure he wouldn't cause a scene in front of her mom. So the mom meets him, takes my back, give it back to me. Everything in the back was ripped, cut, destroyed. Everything. I could not contain myself. I called and cursed him for 5 minutes straight, without repeating myself, and without giving him a chance to say anything. The next day, I heard he had told all his friends that the fine he received was 10 times the amount it actually was. So yeah, none of the other bad dates I ever had beats this one. Story 12. In 2020 I was young and kinda desperate. 17, and just looking for people to hang out with really. So I met this guy on a dating app. He seemed nice enough. Not my type, but had potential for a glow up, you could say, so it motivated me to give him a chance. He was 22, and I was stupid. It was a hot summer afternoon. I met up with him on a corner between our houses, and we went for a walk. He was friendly, too friendly. And he stunk. He was absolutely fucking rank. Just imagine the worst body odor you've ever smelled in your life, and times that by 3. Now, I was trying to give him a chance, but he was wanting to hold my hand, and all I could think about was how dirty his fingernails were, how greasy his hair was. OFFS, just thinking about it right now is making me gag. We ended up sitting under a tree to talk, and he beckoned me to sit next to him, where he then put his arm around my shoulders. I turned my head away to just get a whiff of a fresh breeze because otherwise I'd fucking pass out. He's putting his other hand in my leg, nodding his head, until he says, Yeah, this could definitely be something. Gross. Anyway, I offered to get us ice cream after he made it known he didn't have any money, and we walked him home after that. He lived with his grandparents at the time, in their basement. He offered to show me around, and politely I agreed, until he took us downstairs. We got into this whole virgin talk, you know how it goes. I told him I was, but I wasn't sure if I was ready for that yet. He puts his hand on my knee and tilts his head towards a mystery room. I can take care of that for you right now. I excused myself and ran home. I burned the shirt and exfoliated like hell when I realized his sweaty BO smell had soaked into my shoulder. I know this may seem like I was super superficial, but like I said, he wasn't really my type, and on paper his interests and hobbies seemed sweet enough. He was just down on his luck currently, so I thought I'd sweep my judgment to the side and give him a chance. Holy fuck, I sometimes feel like I can still smell him. Then we have another story. I actually have a shitty MS Paint comic somewhere I drew about this like 30 years ago, El Mayo. Strapping cost, this one is crazy. Went on a sort of date with a guy at a bar in the city that I frequented to play pool and get some dinner maybe. It was a dead slow night as we were getting some shitty winter weather. I'ma call him Dumbshit Danny. At that point, we were the only 2 people in the bar. Dumbshit Danny started just pounding beers and got beyond wasted. Started badgering me to go home with him. After repeated no's, I finally snapped at him and he lost his shit. Let loose this howling wail and threw himself at my legs. Scream crying, with snot and tears pouring down his face, he started begging me to go home with him. I could not get him loose from my legs and started jabbing him with the pool stick I was holding to get him to let go. I looked up over his head to exchange dumbfounded looks with the equally nonplussed bartender who finally jumped into action. I think he was so shocked by the guy's behavior that it took him a minute to process. I know I was, having never seen anybody behave like that in my life. Bartender has to drag dude off me and winds up dragging him outside because he won't leave. Dude is ugly, crying the whole time. Oh, but wait, it gets better. Like a dummy, I stuck around too long chatting with the bartender, who was a friend of mine. At first it was kind of a stick around to make sure dude gets gone, but then I got to yakking and lost track of time. Was interrupted by another patron coming in the back who hollered, "Mad. There's someone out here kicking your car." Me and the bartender rushed out to find he had gone and gotten his equally drunk friend and come back. The friend was kicking my car and screaming that I was a slut while dumbshit Danny was laying face down on the ground next to my car. Not passed out, just laying there. I guess he was still crying. What the fuck he was doing. Before any of us sane people had time to process, this little tableau caught the attention of a cop in the Wendy's drive-thru next door. He comes straight over the curb to get to the bar parking lot. Dude kicking my car gets arrested. Dumbshit Danny gets told to GTFO, or he would get arrested too, having been told once already to leave. He slinks off into the night. I hope to never see him again, but that was too hopeful. Because round about 3 a.m. dumbshit Danny shows up at my house. I still lived with my parents in a small town at the time, a good 45 minutes from the city. This was back in the phone book days, so it wasn't too hard to find my parents' house, the phone book for this town being the size of a magazine, and us having a unique name. My stepdad gets woken up by dumbshit standing in our front yard yelling incoherently. Calls the county sheriff. Dude tries to tell him I invited him over, but nobody is buying it, lol. He finally gets arrested. Bails out. Immediately starts emailing me all this nonsensical shit. Email after email. Finally I wind up having to get a restraining order against the guy. He's sending me hundreds of emails and showing up at the places I hang out. He broke it 3 times, getting arrested all 3 times. Finally, after that last arrest, I never heard from him again. 20 or so years later, I'm at that same bar, and his name comes up in conversation. I asked what happened to the guy as I'd known him back in the 90s. I did not mention any of the history I had with him. Just dumbass Danny? I used to know him. Whatever happened to him? Apparently he had a bad breakup and moved to California in 00. It's me. I was the bad breakup LMAO nutbag. Story 11. She wanted to do a picnic of sorts, but it was July, incredibly humid and a bit steamy/rainy that day. She insisted we did the picnic deal. Spent an hour getting this table nicely set up with food, dessert, candles, a nice tablecloth, cushions for us to sit on comfortably. Had never done this, but was trying hard to impress. Was actually quite proud of the end result. She arrives 15 minutes late. There was no connection hardly at all. She was not talkative, despite spending hours on the phone texting for a week leading up to date. She said she loved Latin/Caribbean food, so I got takeout from one of the best places local, a kind of assortment of things. She didn't touch any of it. She sat and looked at the river in the background, and I asked her a couple of times if she was okay. If she would like to move closer to the river? Was there anything I could do to make her more comfortable? And she would just smile and say no, and that it was all wonderful, again, while not touching a single thing except a bottled water she brought. I sat through this for almost an hour. Finally, I just flat out said, I guess I was expecting a bit more conversation or at least some engagement in this. I'm sorry, it seems this date was a bust. And she just awkwardly smiled and said, I'm sorry too, I can see you put a lot of effort into it. So because I had nothing to lose, I asked her what was wrong or what I did wrong. And she responds, nothing really, I just think this is all a bit overboard for a first date. It's kind of cringe, like you're desperate. I can't even lie. My feelings were pretty hurt as I put together the date based on her cues and questions I had subtly asked. Even went ahead with the gross atmosphere of 90-degree weather and steamy, post-storm humidity. I wanted to respond, but I just bit my tongue and said, well, if you're not going to eat, I sure am. And I went to town on the food while she sat there. There was a couple sitting on a swing near us, and I went, hey guys, you hungry? And as it turned out, they were on a date, but were broke, so were just enjoying each other's company. And I invited them over to enjoy the table full of food with me. She left a few minutes after they came over, having said nothing since I started eating. And after she left, I had the best time with these 2 strangers, eating and laughing and telling them what happened, and both of them telling me I deserved better. I'm still good friends with them some 10 years later now. Never heard from the girl again outside of a single text later that evening saying, "I'm sorry, that was a bitcha thing for me to say to you." I guess expecting me to respond, which I never did, just blocked her number and moved on. Another story from my friend. He showed me his car, and he pulled up a breathalyzer that was installed by the driver's seat. He explained that he had to blow in it or the car wouldn't start, and also every 5 to 10 minutes or so the thing would beep and he would have to blow in it again. He made it seem like it was no big deal. He said jump in, and we can grab dinner. I said I'm just gonna drive my own car to the restaurant, because I never let strangers drive me anywhere. He seemed totally shocked but said okay. We got to the restaurant, and he said he didn't have any money, and asked if we could walk around a park instead. I said okay. This park was sketchy and gross. He immediately hiked his leg up really high on a tree like almost doing the splits, and said he had to stretch. He then tried to coax me to walk some isolated trails, and I flat out said no, and that I wasn't comfortable being isolated alone with someone I didn't know. He kept saying, "But you do know me." He then proceeded to talk about a bunch of boring nonsense. He asked if I wanted to go back to his place to have sex. I said no. He then got really annoyed and said he was wasting his time on this pointless date. I said I agree, and I'm leaving. I started walking back to my car, and he said, "Oh, I parked much closer, let me give you a ride back to your car," and he put his arm around me hard and was basically making it so I couldn't get away. I played dumb and said something like, "Wow, you're so strong, do you work out?" Blah blah. He began walking me to his car without letting me move. I decided to play into it and said, "You know that you're holding me against you, I kinda do want to go back to your place." He lit up and said, "Oh yes, we can have so much fun." We got back to his car and he walked me towards the passenger side. By this point he had let up a bit thinking I wanted to bang him. My heart started racing and my head was screaming for me to get away. I felt like if I got in that car I was doomed. Suddenly I said, "OMG, what was that?" pointing behind him. He turned to look and I fucking Olympic sprinted away. He started to chase me screaming at me, but he was too slow. He ran to get back in his car and peeled out trying to follow me. I called 911 and hid. I was able to give them his car and plate and description, etc. He didn't try to find me for long. He left the park and raced away. I stayed hidden until the police came. They drove me back to my car and said they would follow up with me, but that he hasn't technically done anything illegal. After that I only met in public in the daytime for dating. It was scary as fuck. Story 10. I moved to Utah a few years ago, and I'm an agnostic lesbian, so I knew this would be terrible going in. First girl took me to a bunch of Ted Bundy sites, which admittedly was kind of interesting, but probably should have been a red flag. We slept together a few times, and I tried at one point to ask her a little more about her sexual preferences, so we could explore some things if she liked. She basically screamed, "Don't you want to find out?" And I was like, "I'm okay." Didn't see her again. Seemed like she was still hung up on an ex anyway. Second girl was really cute and had a hot tub, but come to find out she was a raging alcoholic. She had a bunch of gay/bi women over for a party, and they were all sloppy drunks and seemed like shitty people. The whole group had fucked and dated each other. They were weirdly aggressive and all wanted to arm wrestle. I love a competition at least, so I was like, bet. I beat them all, and we got to this big bitch. I was doubting I would win this round, but I did. She got butthurt and demanded we try left-handed. I still beat her, so at least I had that high. I saw her a few more times BC. I was bored and I hate myself, but one morning she called McDonald's and started screaming that she couldn't get chicken nuggies at 9 a.m., and I just couldn't anymore. Next girl was on and off for a while, and she was a lot of fun, but also seemed to have some anger issues or something going on. She had a dream that we were drinking blood one night and woke up flipping out. I had to sit on the couch and contemplate why I was here in Utah trying to date all these religious trauma girls. She got mad that I didn't reassure her it wasn't real. Why do I need to reassure you that I'm not in a blood cult? Later she started dick riding some guy and told me she had to get plan B and maybe she was bi. Okay, enjoy your journey I guess, but I was past caring at this point, so her jab didn't get a reaction out of me like she wanted. She continued to try to get a rise out of me by mentioning several other partners for the next few months. Finally I went off on her, and she got filed in the blocked section with all the others so I could have blessed peace. I'll gloss over all the girls that think they are poly here, but don't really know what that means. My poly lifestyle died in Utah, BC. Holy hell, it's bad. The last girl I met on Hinge. We went for a short hike and camped for a bit. She was really shy, and I wasn't sure if she even liked me. I cooked shrimp scampi over the fire and massaged her hands. They always hurt her. It started getting late, so we packed up. I sliced the shit out of my hands on my knife in the dark and was bleeding everywhere, but I tried to keep cool about it as I drove her back and didn't say anything. I'm in a demonic blood cult and all. I got out to wish her good night. She gave me the shyest and fastest peck on the lips that completely surprised me, and ran so quickly inside that it seemed like she vaporized into thin air. I was left standing there and was like, okay, I guess she likes me. Anyway, we are married now, and if I can find love in this weird-ass state, then so can you. Another story here for you. I was dating someone I went to middle school with and reconnected with after high school. She had been living with a man she was engaged with, but he kicked her out because he got cold feet. So after finding out she was basically sleeping in the park, I just let her come stay with me. She lived with me for about a year, no issues, I thought. I lost my job, and the house I was renting was sold out from under me at around the same time. So we moved in with some of my family. I asked her to get a job to help make ends meet and pay our cell phone bill. I was already working again at this point. She went and got a job and worked for about 2 months before getting fired and not telling me. She then proceeded to have me or my family take her to work every day and pick her up every day. Then she would have a friend pick her up from the parking lot, and she would go sleep around with every guy she knew and make them pay her so she could hide the fact that she wasn't working anymore. Then one day she got dropped off by her ex, the one that kicked her out. She said that they were just friends when I asked her about it. Found out from one of my other friends later that night that he caught them at a movie theater making out, and she promised that she would sleep with him, my friend, if he didn't tell me. Fast forward 2 days after I actually started asking our mutual friends what was up, she had told them all that I was into reclaiming. I am not. So they never bothered to let me know when they caught her sleeping around because they all thought I was into it. I confront her about it. At this point I knew about 8 guys she was sleeping with and wasn't 100% sure about another 4. She threw a fit, started destroying and throwing around furniture, tipped over a fridge, and pulled a TV off of a wall. All while saying if I was a better boyfriend, I would have just let her sit around at home all day, and I would have paid for everything she wouldn't have had to sleep around. I told her to get out of the house until she calmed down, and we could talk about what to do next. When she gets back 2 days later, she stayed with her ex. She decided to throw a brick at my house trying to break windows, but fortunately she wasn't exactly strong enough. My mom pulled up, she was coming over for dinner, and she threw a brick and hit my mom in the chest. So cops were called. She was arrested. We didn't end up pressing charges on the condition that she gets her stuff, leaves, and never comes back on the property. She does, and I'm there along with one of my friends and an officer. The officer asks me to answer a few questions, and my friend watches her, but doesn't know whose stuff is what. So she comes out, throws a box into her ex's car, and takes off. I got back to my room to find that she stole my PS2 and all of my games, stole my wallet, social security card and birth certificate, and she had cut the power cable to my PC while my friend had run to the bathroom. Told the cop who was still there, and he went and found them and took my wallet, social and birth certificate back, but because I had no proof that the PS2 and games were mine, he couldn't do anything about those. I decided to stay single for about a year after that, but when I go to re-enter the dating pool, I come to find out that she had been dragging my name through the mud at every bar, club, and venue I frequented while we had been together. According to her, I beat her, threw her out without cause, stole her money, attacked her, destroyed all of her things before she could pick them up, ECT. She also did this to 6 of the guys I had contacted and confirmed that she was sleeping with. And even now, 10 years later, I occasionally go on dates, and someone will say, oh wait, you're that guy who beat, and our asterisk his GF a few years ago. Worked out after she was gone that she had ultimately been sleeping with 16 different men, who all thought they were exclusive. And she scammed all of them and myself into paying her way for a while there. I would tell you all her names so you can avoid her, but I found out from her mom late last year that she had voluntarily entered treatment for schizophrenia and pathological lying, and I really hope she gets better. Story 9. I have a few of these stories. 1. A girl messaged me about 6 months ago. She had a decent profile, mentioning going to film school in NYC, along with a love for comics. I was intrigued. Beyond that, she was really cute and 5 feet 7 inches, which was perfect for a 6 feet 4 inches man such as myself. After a few messages back and forth, I asked her out on a date, in which she mentioned she was nervous about meeting in person. The fears were completely reasonable. She had a friend who had a terrible experience with online dating, taking to a guy who ended up being a 40-year-old man that sent fake pictures. I agreed that we can text for a few weeks until she was comfortable. Once she became comfortable, she asked to meet at a public place, just in case I was not who my profile said I was. When we met, she was easily 40 pounds heavier than her pictures, about 3 to 4 inches shorter, and that was only the beginning of the lies. She was not currently going to film school, but instead planned on going once she finished community college. Furthermore, at 23 she had been in community college since she was 18, and it wasn't because she was working during this time to afford it. She was currently living with her parents, and was unable to drive to the date. Her parents had to drive her. After the date, she continued to message me for 2 months, and is the reason I now only give out a Google Voice number to my dates. Understandably, there is nothing wrong with going back to school, or even living with your parents during a hard time. This, however, was not the case. She was neither looking for work, nor had immediate plans to move on with her life. 2.1 of my dates knew they had Scrabble at this bar, and decided to play board games there. She was so into the game, that she had not interest in talking and getting to know each other, just play Scrabble. The game went on forever, and I seriously just wanted to go home by the end of the night. Sure, Scrabble may be fun for some people, but not on a first date at Prohibition Bar, especially when you refuse to talk between turns. Afterwards, she talked about how she cuts her own hair, her daddy issues, and how she sees a psychiatrist for image issues. 3. I am at a wine bar with a date. We are having a good conversation, and the date was going decently, not bad, not great. After a drink, she starts slurring her speech a bit, and then says, "Can I ask you a serious question? Are you gay?" After explaining that I am not even bisexual, she then say, "Well, I am not that into metrosexual men." This girl proceeded to message me 5 more times on OKC to see if we can hang out as friends. 4. And my favorite, my first date on OKC got drunk and vomited at a bar. When I offered to walk her home, she refused, saying she does not want some stranger from the internet knowing where she lives. I even offered to walk her a few blocks from her place, in which she still refused. I am not going to leave some drunk girl, no matter how obnoxious, stranded in the middle of downtown SJ, so I just walk around town with her for 3 hours. During that time, she talked about her pet rats and her scoliosis. After she sobered up, I let her drive home, in which she then texted me the next day to say, I did not feel a romantic connection. 5. Story from a friend. Lovely young lady, attractive, funny, and loved the same movies I do. She had a sort of free-spirited thing about life that at times my structured engineer self can't wrap my head around. Though I figured, what the hell, let's meet for drinks and see. I meet her a couple blocks from the bar, as we both live walking distance. She's giggling and silly almost from second one. She then proceeds to tell me about a huge bowl her roommate and her smoked before heading out. Now, I have no opinion on the substance. I tried it, didn't like it, think within limits it being legal is fine. That's not the issue. It would be like showing up drunk to a date in my mind. We get drinks and she's starving, checking all the stereotype boxes. Gets more food than her slim frame can handle, and we chat. It's really hard to talk to her. Have you ever tried to talk to someone stoned when you are sober? She claims she's fine, but she does it almost every day, and someone better accept that. The date goes on longer than it should because she got 2 full meals, and because I'm a sucker for conversation that, while interesting, I know won't lead anywhere. We part ways and I exchange a nice hug. Within 2 minutes I get a text saying I'm too dull and boring and need to loosen up. Well, I am an engineer, and I'll admit I'm a tad structured, but really? I politely told her showing up high to a date was immature. She freaked out, name-calling, saying how I'm a loser. Yes, the loser with multiple graduate degrees making $85K a year at a Fortune 500, and you move from random artsy job to artsy job. I'm too lame for her, and oh, my nose is ugly. Hey, I can't change my genetics for having a big nose. Which the last 2 women I dated, who were great looking, seemed to think was masculine. Story 7. I have a couple of stories. First was the time when I was trying to meet up with a 24-year-old woman, and instead, there was a 40-plus-year-old man. His logic was that since you already came here, you'd want to hang out anyway. Except I didn't. I left quite rudely. Then there have been the constant times gay men have sent me very vulgar messages, talking about how they would pleasure me, and some of them actually made me feel physically ill because of the descriptions. This is very odd, considering I always advertise I am a straight male, but apparently to some guys, straight means in the closet. Let's see, what else? Oh, there was the date with literally the most boring woman on the planet, who also lied about her looks. When I met up with her, not only was she a little bit hard to look at, lot of wrinkles for a 30-year-old, but she was literally so boring. She literally had nothing to say about herself aside from, I like to read, and I sometimes drink wine. She mostly wanted me to constantly talk about myself, but I needed some form of response from her aside from practically blank stares. Then there was the woman who was quite clearly not from the US and, well, this one was a bit odd. She sent a picture of her hair, saying she took it last week, and when I showed her that the picture was from 2001 and plastered all over Google, she insisted it was her hair. She kept trying to have me call her and gave me, for different phone numbers. She kept insisting on a meet up, and despite me saying, no, you have not been truthful, I do not want to meet up, she kept thinking I wanted to. I'm not entirely certain what her motive was, but I'm glad I never met up. Then there was the time I met up with this blonde woman. We decided to go to dinner, and literally within the first minute of us sitting down, she pulls out her phone and starts talking to a friend. For nearly 10 minutes this happens until she stupidly said, yeah, I'm on a date with this loser. I'm gonna make it seem like I'm gonna let him have me, but just use him for a free meal. Honestly, who the hell admits that on a phone conversation during the date? When I got up to leave, she got a little pissy, until I quoted exactly what she said. That's when she turned rather red, starting to yell how I shouldn't eavesdrop on people's phone conversations. I simply left. I should also mention I picked her up. She didn't have a car with her. Another story to share. 2 years and 2 states later, I'm still a little hesitant about posting this date. Wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't understand why anyone posts decade-old profile photos. I'm a curvy girl. If a guy isn't into that, I'd much rather he politely ignore my first contact email than do a disgusted double take when he first sees me. Gentlemen, it doesn't matter how good you looked 10 years ago when you had more hair and less belly. If your photo is so out of date a woman can't recognize you, I promise there is no hope she will look past your flabby exterior and see the shining human being within. Instead, she's going to take one look at you and assume everything you've told her is a lie. Don't be that guy. Officer Creepy was succinct, flattering, and interested in meeting over dinner, his treat. At the time, I thought any excuse to visit one of Bardstown Road's tastier houses of meaty delights was a good one, so I agreed to meet him on a nice, unromantic Tuesday. Based on his profile, I expected a slightly straight-lacked, pleasantly plump, curly-haired man 8 to 10 years my senior. When I showed up, the restaurant was full of the usual Bardstown Road crowd of hipsters on dates, young professionals out for a night of adventure, and cheerful tables full of heavily tattooed and pierced people who work on the strip. I took a seat by the bar and let the waitress know if I was here for a first date. If he stood me up, I'd order some empanadas to take home. Internet date? She leaned in conspiratorially. Is there a special rescue signal I should know about? This is one of the reasons I loved first dates on Bardstown. I grinned and gave her the Vulcan, live long and prosper salute. Suddenly, a hand clapped on my shoulder. Let's take this outside. The bald, jolly stranger behind me was older than my father. Excuse me? Chris Rachel and I will take a large carafe of sangria and a table outside, he told the waitress. Story 6. Buddy of mine wanted to get in the game, but is super cheap, so he was using plenty of fish, mistake 1. Connects with a chick who seemed down to clown, so he, mistake 2, invited her to his house. She immediately is upset that he doesn't have Tito's vodka, and that's the only thing she drinks. So she insists they go to the liquor store and get some. Now my buddy is 50-50 that he's going to get robbed, but the other 50% is a good chance of getting laid. So he compromises by telling her to drive and leaves his wallet behind. They get into her car, and there's no seat in the passenger side. She says she has a huge dog, so she took the seat out and just sit in the back. And they head off to the liquor store. During the drive, he comes to the understanding that this woman is drunk. He's still holding out for the sex possibility, though they get to the liquor store, and it's too late, closed. The chick says, I know a store they're open late, but the liquor stores are all state stores, they all have the same hours. She insists she knows a place, and he's captive in the back seat. She gets on the interstate, and a while goes by in silence, and he eventually asked, where are we going? And she screams in terror. She'd forgotten he was in the back seat. She tells him they're going to the liquor store in a city 30 minutes away. Now he's almost given up on the failing hope of getting some strange, and just wants to live. Asks if they can just go home, and she screams again. Forgot he was in the car again. So he tried to keep a full conversation going to keep her awake and aware of him, and they eventually get to the destination magic open liquor store. It was closed. She insists it's open and goes to the door and starts pounding on it. Now comes the peanut gallery. Some Mexican guys are sitting in a truck drinking beers and yell at her, "That's closed. You want a beer?" And she starts yelling racial slurs at them, and not even the right ones for Mexicans. Now 3 Mexicans and a drunk/high/bipolar chick are trading profanities. And my buddy finally reached sex chance equals 0% point and just walked away. Turned around the corner and sat down at a bus stop and called me. It's like 1 a.m. on a work night, and I see the call and like, this can't be good. So I drive to get him. He tells me this whole long story that I honestly can't remember half of. It was much worse. Then we drank at his place until dawn and called in sick to work. On top of this story, here is another. Not a date, but rather a girl I was hooking up with at a party. And it's kinda long, but I just think the whole thing was so weird it's worth sharing. We were in her kitchen and we begin to make out, and suddenly she starts talking about how her best friend is totally in love with her, but she keeps kissing me while saying so. Then she elaborates by saying, yeah, my best friend is outside in the party, and I'm like, whoa. Well, should we stop? She goes, no, and I'm kinda uncomfortable anyways because I've been the best friend and I kinda wanna stop. She goes, no, it's totally fine, and then keeps going on about it. Lick really going into detail, and tells me the whole story about how she liked him, but then she didn't, and I'm like, okay. And before I can decide what to do, the best friend walks into the kitchen. He goes, I'm sorry, and then walks out. Normal, uncomfortable situation, right? Well, this happens at least 3 times. Like, he keeps walking in and going, sorry, dude is clearly drunk at this point. So the 3rd time I'm like, nah dude, you guys clearly need to talk. I'll just be outside, you figure out stuff. And the girl holds my hand and makes me stay, but then starts talking to him, and like, she wants me to be a 3rd neutral party or something. She begins to tell him that she didn't like when he did so, and she asks me, what do you think, while holding my arm tightly and not letting me go. I said fuck it and just end up playing along and actively listening to them and trying to help them. I'm a teacher, so I guess I'm good at that. Long story short, I managed to get out of that situation eventually. We go outside, and a few hours later people start leaving. So I go back to her apartment to grab my stuff. Of course, she comes back with me, and now we're all alone in the apartment. We go back to the kitchen and things start getting hot again, when suddenly we hear a knock on the door. And guess whose voice we hear outside? Yeah, of course, her best friend. So I'm like, okay, yeah, no, that's it, bye. And as I'm about to leave, she stomps her feet on top of the couch, putting her leg between me and the door, and asks me, so what are we? And I'm like, nothing. We just kissed, and listen, I'm sorry. I just went through a breakup, so I'm not really looking for anything more than that right now. I'm sorry if that disappoints you. And that was true, but also I didn't want to get into that whole mess at all. She goes, but can we still mess around some more? And before I can say anything, the best friend knocks again. So we open the door and he is there, and then he says sorry again, and I say, chill, I'm leaving anyways. And before I can go down the stairs, the girl calls me up and goes, my friend is too drunk. Can you make sure he gets home safe? And since I can't for the life of me say no to that, I end up in a cab with him 5 minutes later. During the trip, he starts telling me how much he loves her, but that she hurt him, and so on and so on. And I can totally understand the guy because, again, I've been in his position, but at this point I just want to get home and forget about the whole mess. But I have to make sure he gets home safe, so we stop in front of his house, and as he is about to leave, he turns around and says, please take good care of her, she is happier with you. He gets off the car and walks off into the night. A month goes by, and I see both the girl and her best friend walking down the street holding hands as a couple. Story 5. Well, it wasn't so much that she wanted to do what I now know as the daddy/little girl game, and that she actually literally identified as a 4-year-old, age play I think they call it, or that she was clearly still obsessed with her ex, or that after all this coming out on the 2nd date, she proceeded to divulge that she had been raped many, many times. In graphic detail. It was so excessive that there's no way it was true, but when someone tells you that kind of thing, you want to give them the benefit of the doubt. We ended up back at some relative's house, and just as I was about to bounce, I realized she was already really drunk, despite only having a couple of drinks. She was a pretty tiny girl though. And then she began to talk about Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street. No, it wasn't any of the previously mentioned things. It was Sweeney Todd that led me through one of the most bizarre experiences of my life. Apparently it was the greatest play ever penned, blubbered out in a grand drunken dissertation that probably couldn't be rivaled by even the greatest booze artists of our time. I admit, I was captivated in some morbid way. I stayed and sipped on my drinks as she went further down a rabbit hole that, as it existed within her, had no bottom. It was like watching someone who wrote their thesis on the thing, but was promptly failed vent about the injustice of it all. And I imagined she would have failed because she handed the thesis into a technical writing class while drunk. This is how discordant and obtuse it all was. By my guess, the only type of person still willing to listen to what was becoming more obviously a compulsion evolved far beyond impulse were strangers. The other people present had expressions like it was happening for the 1,000th time, and they were powerless to stop it. And I was powerless to look away. Such a passionate, fervent, elaborate, and frenzied car crash. Then she started singing. And did she ever sing? She fell over regularly, and her words were so slurred, and her physical movement so slothful and blurred, that I knew I was in for a real show. She did the whole play. From beginning to end, every part, each character with their own voice. She was mostly naked by the time it ended. I sat there and cheered her on, and tried to stop her drinking, and stoked the fire pit in the backyard of this stranger's house. She didn't miss a beat, a line, a gesture. Even when I went to the can, the neighbors hollered and the dogs barked, and I was beginning to wonder if I wasn't dreaming or something. I had never before nor since seen someone so in love with a piece of art as this crazy little French girl was. I was almost envious that I didn't feel that way about something. When she finally wrapped up and I told her to take a bow, she toppled over doing just that and proceeded to crawl over to me in my chair and try to initiate a blowjob. I laughed, picked her up, carried her in the house, and dumped her on the couch. Didn't even bother saying goodbye. I knew she wouldn't remember it anyway. I walked back to my truck laughing and contemplating the sheer absurdity of humanity, knowing I'd never see anything like that again. Wherever you are, Michaela, I hope you're doing okay. I hope you found your daddy, and life's a little smoother for you. But it probably isn't. Blessed be the mad ones. On top of this story, here is another to add. We matched, he said I was cute, and asked how small I am. I gave him my height/weight, and he replied with something like, "That's so hot." He then asked who I lived with and learned I live alone. He said he had roommates and wanted to come over to my apartment. I told him that I would only meet him in a public place. If that went well, I might invite him over, but considering that my size and that the city's pretty gritty for an itty-bitty pretty boy, I never invited people I hadn't met to my home. I thought he was cool. He sent flirty texts for about a week before I suggested we meet at a coffee shop at noon on Friday. He asked me to name the location. I did, but he said he couldn't get there on his lunch break. I said, since you are the one with time and location restraints at that time of day, why don't you pick the cafe? He said he wanted to meet at my apartment. I told him no, and asked if he'd pick a coffee shop. I think he joked about meeting at my place for the 3rd time. I named a coffee shop and said that I'd meet him there at noon, if I got confirmation. This was around 10 a.m. on that Friday. I hadn't heard back from him by 11, and realized that I didn't want to meet this guy. I have to remember that because I'm openly trans on my dating profile, people may target me for assault. The first thing this guy did was confirm that he's large enough to overpower me. He then asked to meet me at my home, where I live alone. Even after I was very clear that I would only meet him in a public place, he kept joking that I should invite him to my apartment. He could have been a dumb, horny guy, but he also could have been someone targeting me for assault. I went home and picked up a work gig. I was out of cellular service for an hour, and had a lot of messages from him when I returned. He said that the app wouldn't let him text me all morning, and he was sorry, but still wanted to meet at my apartment. After all that, he still refused to meet me in a public place. It freaked me the fuck out. I told him that I didn't want to meet him anymore, and deleted the app. Story 6. Buddy of mine wanted to get in the game, but is super cheap, so he was using plenty of fish, mistake 1. Connects with a chick who seemed down to clown, so he, mistake 2, invited her to his house. She immediately is upset that he doesn't have Tito's vodka, and that's the only thing she drinks. So she insists they go to the liquor store and get some. Now my buddy is 50-50 that he's going to get robbed, but the other 50% is a good chance of getting laid. So he compromises by telling her to drive and leaves his wallet behind. They get into her car, and there's no seat in the passenger side. She says she has a huge dog, so she took the seat out and just sit in the back. And they head off to the liquor store. During the drive, he comes to the understanding that this woman is drunk. He's still holding out for the sex possibility, though they get to the liquor store, and it's too late, closed. The chick says, I know a store they're open late, but the liquor stores are all state stores, they all have the same hours. She insists she knows a place, and he's captive in the back seat. She gets on the interstate, and a while goes by in silence, and he eventually asked, where are we going? And she screams in terror. She'd forgotten he was in the back seat. She tells him they're going to the liquor store in a city 30-minute away. Now he's almost given up on the failing hope of getting some strange, and just wants to live. Asks if they can just go home, and she screams again. Forgot he was in the car again. So he tried to keep a full conversation going to keep her awake and aware of him, and they eventually get to the destination magic open liquor store. It was closed. She insists it's open and goes to the door and starts pounding on it. Now comes the peanut gallery. Some Mexican guys are sitting in a truck drinking beers and yell at her, that's closed. You want a beer? And she starts yelling racial slurs at them, and not even the right ones for Mexicans. Now 3 Mexicans and a drunk/high/bipolar chick are trading profanities. And my buddy finally reached sex chance equals 0% point and just walked away. Turned around the corner and sat down at a bus stop and called me. It's like 1 a.m. on a work night, and I see the call and like, this can't be good. So I drive to get him. He tells me this whole long story that I honestly can't remember half of. It was much worse. Then we drank at his place until dawn and called in sick to work. On top of this story, here is another. Not a date, but rather a girl I was hooking up with at a party, and it's kinda long, but I just think the whole thing was so weird it's worth sharing. We were in her kitchen and we begin to make out, and suddenly she starts talking about how her best friend is totally in love with her, but she keeps kissing me while saying so. Then she elaborates by saying, yeah, my best friend is outside in the party, and I'm like, whoa. Well, should we stop? She goes, no. And I'm kinda uncomfortable anyways because I've been the best friend and I kinda wanna stop. She goes, no, it's totally fine, and then keeps going on about it. Lick really going into detail and tells me the whole story about how she liked him, but then she didn't, and I'm like, okay. And before I can decide what to do, the best friend walks into the kitchen. He goes, I'm sorry, and then walks out. Normal, uncomfortable situation, right? Well, this happens at least 3 times. Like, he keeps walking in and going, sorry, dude is clearly drunk at this point. So the 3rd time I'm like, nah dude, you guys clearly need to talk. I'll just be outside, you figure out stuff. And the girl holds my hand and makes me stay, but then starts talking to him and like, she wants me to be a 3rd neutral party or something. She begins to tell him that she didn't like when he did so, and she asks me, what do you think, while holding my arm tightly and not letting me go. I said fuck it and just end up playing along and actively listening to them and trying to help them. I'm a teacher, so I guess I'm good at that. Long story short, I managed to get out of that situation eventually. We go outside, and a few hours later people start leaving, so I go back to her apartment to grab my stuff. Of course, she comes back with me, and now we're all alone in the apartment. We go back to the kitchen and things start getting hot again, when suddenly we hear a knock on the door. And guess whose voice we hear outside? Yeah, of course, her best friend. So I'm like, okay, yeah, no, that's it, bye. And as I'm about to leave, she stomps her feet on top of the couch, putting her leg between me and the door, and asks me, so what are we? And I'm like, nothing. We just kissed, and listen, I'm sorry, I just went through a breakup, so I'm not really looking for anything more than that right now. I'm sorry if that disappoints you. And that was true, but also I didn't want to get into that whole mess at all. She goes, but can we still mess around some more? And before I can say anything, the best friend knocks again. So we open the door and he is there, and then he says sorry again, and I say, chill, I'm leaving anyways. And before I can go down the stairs, the girl calls me up and goes, my friend is too drunk. Can you make sure he gets home safe? And since I can't for the life of me say no to that, I end up in a cab with him 5 minutes later. During the trip, he starts telling me how much he loves her, but that she hurt him, and so on and so on. And I can totally understand the guy because, again, I've been in his position, but at this point I just want to get home and forget about the whole mess. But I have to make sure he gets home safe, so we stop in front of his house, and as he is about to leave, he turns around and says, please take good care of her, she is happier with you. He gets off the car and walks off into the night. A month goes by, and I see both the girl and her best friend walking down the street holding hands as a couple.